this session called 5 Azure Services Every Developer Should Know. The reason I took this, or I created this presentation was because I've seen a lot of developers being a little bit afraid, about Azure. And when they think about the cloud, most people are thinking that the cloud is someone else's computer, and that's it. You just take it and you put it there and you don't care. Well, it can be someone else's computer and you can just use it like that. But in my opinion, if you really want to get some value out of something like, like any cloud, not only Azure, you need to start using the services. You need to do the native part of the service. So use some of the things that are already there. And the reason you get them there is because, there are some smart people and they decided, or maybe they saw that there was a need and they started to create different type of services. Now, this is going to be just a demo session. So I will show you how I can take a simple application and then start using some of the services available in Azure, and how exactly would you should think about it, and why would you use the one, why would you use the other, and what would be the advantages of them. This is more or less, I think that if I want to do it justice, this should be a whole day presentation, not only 50 minutes. So I'll try to cram everything in 50 minutes. So if it feels a little bit too rushed out, it's because I just want to make sure I have enough time for that. But however, if you have any questions or if you want me to go in any details, let's talk about the session after the session a little bit more. I'm very happy to do that. So my name is TIberiu Covaci, or TB for short. I'm originally from Romania, but I left Romania about 23 years ago. So yeah, I've been traveling the world a lot. I lived in Sweden for a while, then I left Sweden, but since last year I'm back in Sweden, mainly because we have a new baby at home. So I have 3 daughters, 10 months, 12 years, and 14 years. So I got some combinations, I would say. So I'm back in the saddle of being a young child parent. So with not sleeping and all the things that comes with. And I'm working in Denmark, so I'm actually going from Sweden to Denmark every single day. Fun fact: it takes me less to go from home to my office in Denmark, which is actually in Copenhagen, than it took me yesterday to come from the airport to the conference center. So yesterday it took me about an hour and 10 minutes to come from the airport. I landed at 4. I think that was the giveaway. Normally it takes me about an hour and 5 minutes to get from home to work, and that includes a ferry ride. So it's I think I'm quite okay. But when you say to people, "Oh, you live in Sweden but work in Denmark," oh my God, that should be a lot. Or are you working remote? No, I'm actually almost 4 days a week. I'm in the office. Not only that, we opened actually an office here about 3 months ago. So we are having people working for us across the street next to the big mall, Europa Mall or something. I don't know exactly the address. So I've been there twice already. So I really like that. It says here that I'm a Microsoft regional director. That doesn't mean that I'm working for Microsoft. It means I'm working with Microsoft a lot, actually. And as a regional director, Microsoft allows us to get access to the senior leadership team. And I can say, one of the perks of being part of this program, and one of my biggest achievement in my life, was that my daughters got to meet Satya Nadella last year. So yeah, they spoke with him for 5 minutes. So that's the highlight of my career. Nothing else I've done actually matters, but that was the highlight. That was the thing that I really loved the most about it. So they got to do that. It is a program. Most people call that like Uber MVPs. So that means we are doing what the MVPs are doing, but a little bit more. And the little bit more part is the fact that we discuss with businesses quite a lot. So we don't only talk with the communities, but we go and talk with the CEOs. We talk about Microsoft technologies. We help them with their strategies and so on. So that's why they have this separate program. I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Tibor19, and that actually concludes my presentation. The rest of it would be coding. So if you want the presentation, I can give it so you can get it, but I don't think it will bring too much value. So let me tell you what I want to do. So I told you that there are some services, and of course, if you want to use a platform, you need to start thinking about how do you go native. Now, that can come with some issues, mainly because a lot of people are saying, you know what, we don't want to take a dependency, or we don't want to be cloud dependent. We want to create an application that's cloud independent. You can do that, but then you have to pay a bit of a price, because the performance would be different, and you need to create maybe an abstraction layer. And of course, when Microsoft and when Amazon and when Google, when they created their versions of the cloud, the reason they did it is because they wanna have this hyper data center, hyperscale data center. Not only you get virtual machines, but you get services. I know that that might not resonate with us as developers, because sometimes, if something is not invented here, if something is not written in-house, it doesn't work. So I have to do my own, my own things. I have to implement the services my own way, which is, I don't know, might be good, but sometimes you might actually save some time and some headaches by just going with something else that it's used. And then there is another advantage. If the more people you have using the same technology, the more feedback you get, the more, there is a bigger incentive for the provider of that service to make it work even better. So I think, can give you some advantages. So I have a simple application, simple and simple. Let me, and I was using this application for the past 15 years in all my presentations. So yeah, when I want to demo how you do a debugging on ASP.NET Web Forms application, that was the application I used. When I want to do a demo on how you create an MVC application, that was the application I used. When I want to teach people about Angular, that was the application I used, because it's a simple web application, but you can use it to demo so many points. So let me show you the application first. The application, it's called the Spaghetti Code Files. And it is a recipe application. Pretty simple. It doesn't do too much. It just shows me some recipes. I have about 9 of them. I put in the database only 3 recipes with pictures, just to show them and show to the people how that would look like. So I have a I feel lucky button, and that would give me whatever recipe. Right now, it's not even implemented to generate a random number. It only gives me number 1, because it doesn't make any difference in the demo that I'm trying to do today. But normally that would be a random number generator, and it will always give me a different recipe when I press on that. And I have a weekly menu, and of course, if I want Tuesday pizza, then I need to go in here and I'd say, yes, this is a 1 takeaway menu, and I need to look for the phone number. I need to call to order the pizza and then pick up the pizza. So that's a very simple recipe, So those kind of things you would find in here. Of course, some recipes might be a little bit more advanced, and then all of a sudden you start having a lot of people trying to use your application. And of course, as long as I'm running it on my machine, that's okay. I can take care of that, but I might want to do something more. I might want to move this application to production. So the way you normally do a production application, you take it and you put it on a machine with an IIS on it, So that's it. But then we have a bit of an issue. If you start to do the application this way, the very first thing you need to think about scalability. So moving from 1 machine to 2 machines is actually the hardest thing you can do when you do web deployment, when you deploy your web application. So of course, once you solve that problem, then you have then you might actually think, yes, so I have a successful application. Of course, you might need to connect to a database in the backend, and so on and so on and so on. So there are a lot of things that you need to consider. Well, one of the very first services that Microsoft created, so that's why it's called the 5 services, one of the very first services Microsoft created was something that they called the web role. Now, at the time, and I'm talking about 11 years ago now, at the time, Microsoft was not trying to compete with the data centers. They were just trying to help us as developers to make our lives easier. So what I said, you know what, you are going to get a ready-made machine for you with IIS installed. The only thing you have to give us the application, the files that you want to deploy inside the application. And by the way, if you want to do that, we have a place for you where you can put them, and you'd be able to take the file from there anytime you want, the files from there. So if we need more machines, we do the machines for you. Now, when they created the service, they were thinking, what's the problem everybody is facing? Oh yeah, scaling the application. So let's do that automatically. So they put in front the load balancer with the stickiness cookie session, so you would be able to just talk with the same machine. So you actually don't really need to worry about which machine you are talking with, or to make sure that sessions are saved in a central place and so on. So they did that in a very, I would say, in a very good way. And the idea behind it was, let's help them, deploy the application. Let's help them do the programming and not worrying about how you do the deployment. Of course, that was 10 years ago. Microsoft actually improved that a lot, and they started now to create something that it's called an app service, and the web application that you deploy on an app service. Now, this is exactly the same thing, so there is absolutely no difference, I would say, between what an app service it is and what a web role was back in the days. But what you get instead now, you get the possibility to run your Windows machine there, or they will give you as base operating system a Windows server. They will give you Linux if you want. If you want to run it in a Docker container, you can actually deploy an image, and then it will run a container for on your behalf. So in order for me to be able to do that, I would have to go in here and start creating resources. Now, being Azure and being cloud, it means that it might fail. It's not working all the time, by the way. I don't know if you're aware of that, but some technologies are failing, or every technology, I'm not really sure. Maybe your application doesn't fail, but Azure for sure does. Not all the time, not too many times, very seldom, but I think we as developers need to start being a little bit more, accustomed and to try to accept the fact that Azure might actually fail, and live with that. And our applications, when we design them, we design them, we should have that in mind. So instead of saying, okay, so Azure didn't work, I'm burning and crashing my application, I would say maybe a nice error message, come back in a minute. Or I would even do that behind the curtains for that particular service that I'm trying to use. Anyway, let's go create a resource. And that's what I'm saying. So this resource is here on the very first page. It's a web application. That's what I want to create. And when I want to create a web application, one thing I will need to specify, and it's it's a subscription. That means, where do you want me to send the bill, more or less? So, and where do you have your people as part of this thing in Azure, where I can give them permissions, where I can allow them to do things with your application. So I have here my my subscription, and inside my subscription, I'm creating I need to create a resource group. Now, a resource group is more like a folder. I want to create that in order to be able to put all the things together, and to make it easier for me at the end to just remove all at once, so I don't have to do that 3 times. So I will create a resource group. I usually use the today's date as a name, so let's see if it works. So the name of the resource group would be Demo 2019. I think I need a one more, so it's 11/15. So it's easier to find it. They said it's available, so nobody is using it. And then I need to create a web application. So now when I'm creating the web application, it says, okay, this one has to be unique, because it will be a name that would be under azurewebsites.net. So if I'm going in here, I can put the same name and see if it works. It will try it out and says, yeah, nobody's using this name, so go ahead, use it. Do I want to deploy code or a Docker container? I'm actually doing a code deployment, and I want to use .NET Core 3.0. By the way, talking about the application here, the application, it's a .NET Core 3.0 backend. So I just have one single controller that does 2 gets. So it doesn't do, I mean, actually I have both the post, put, and delete in there just for completeness. But normally you just get only or what I'm using right now in my application, it's the gets part. And then I have a front end done in Angular. So I need to compile both of them in order to be able to do that. Now, this one takes some time, especially if you have to compile an Angular application. I don't know how many of you do Angular, but for 2 pages in Angular, it still takes me about 3 minutes to compile on the machine, and I don't think it's the machine's fault. Anyway, you have a lot of packages, you have a lot of problems, a lot of issues, so it can take a lot of time to do that. So anyway, going back, I want to create that, and I say I want to use this .NET Core 3.0, and I want to choose a location. I want that location to be somewhere close to where I am at the moment, because the closer I am to the data center, the better would be the response time. Now, of course, when you choose regions, you might have other reasons to choose those regions. You might say, okay, I want that to be closer to my users, so I can deploy the same application in a region here that's close to a group of users, and in another region there that is close to another group of users. But right now I'm just saying West Europe, because normally that's one that works for us in Europe. is the one that gives us the best response time, and it's closest to us. Another thing that I can do here, and it asks me, how much are you ready to pay for it? What kind of services do you want? I can start with the free version of the, of the service. And when I'm using the free version, it doesn't take, it doesn't cost me anything, but I don't get too many, I don't get too many features on that. If I need more, like if I want to have custom domains and SSL support for that, and normally you might want, especially if you have a production application, if you want to have stuff like slots, deployment slots. A deployment slot, it means that I have a copy of my application that does almost exactly the same thing, but it runs on the side of my application. So I'm saying, okay, I might need that. If I want to have support for auto scaling as well. So, I know the more people would like to use my recipe applications, the more, the more machines I would need to put in there. And I don't want to have an admin there just sitting there and, getting a message at 3 a.m. Oh, by the way, you need to wake up and go and start the new machine because we have to, we have too many people using our application. So I'm choosing that. It says it costs you $36 or 36 euros per month, which is actually not too much if you think about it, like the type of service you get. But again, if I'm doing dev and test, I can go with the free one, which is free, or I can use something a little bit smaller, which will give me will give me less features, but might still be enough for what I need. But again, going back here, I want to use the production one with the S1, at least for the demo. And I think, if I'm turning, or if I remove that at the end of the day, the whole thing would have cost me maybe less than €1. So it doesn't really, like doing the whole thing here to demo. Next part is, do I want stuff like monitoring? Normally you do. Now it's just a demo, so I don't, I'm not going to show you how the monitoring part is, mainly because we don't have the time for it. I have 5 services to go through. And then one thing that I normally do as well is to choose some tagging, because I want to be able to find those resources. So at the end of the month, I want to look on my Azure bill and try to understand where did my money go. So I will say, oh, okay, so BU stands for business unit. Demo, it means that this was something that I was actually not on a specific business unit, but I was doing them for demos, so I can separate from whatever I have in production. So I get a different bill. And then I'm saying, okay, let's do a review. Everything looks fine. And if everything looks fine, I just press create. Now, again, this might fail. It's not, it's not that it doesn't fail. Normally, if everything works correctly, it takes less than 30 seconds to get a machine up and running, which is actually kind of cool, I would say, to do that. However, as any good, chef will do, I'm just turning back now and I'm taking out of the oven, and I will show you something that's already done. That means I have already created this. Come on, let's go here. I already created this, and I have already an application, and that application is this one in here. So if I go to look at the application, I can actually, it will show me that I have, and you see it went actually very quick. I can go in here and I can show you that I have now an application deployed on Azure. If I want to deploy the application, what I have to do, let me go here and say, go to the resource, so I can go to the application. There is a nice feature here that actually allows me to deploy the application straight from the, from the portal. For some reason, I tried it in the morning. So normally, let me go here. Normally, the way you would deploy this application, so let me go here. Let me stop the local application because now we've seen it's working like this. So normally, I have installed an Azure extension here. The Azure extension will show me all the Azure functions that I have available inside my machine. And the way you do the deployment, you just right-click in here and say, deploy to web app. So I can deploy this application to this web app. Let me see, it's the wrong name here. It's a refresh. It should be 15. Yeah. So I can go back here and I would say, yes, I want you to deploy this. So what this will do for me, it will compile the whole application. Here, let me do something else first. Make sure that I don't have anything. Yes, it's good. So I will go here and I would say, please take this application. If you want to do that, there is a risk for you to get everything wiped out. So are you okay with that? I don't have a problem. And then I would say deploy. So it will start the deployment itself. Now, once the deployment is on the way, it will compile everything. It will package my my ASP.NET Core application. It will package my Angular JS application with the Webpack and everything. So I will end up having like 4 files that will be deployed. Again, for some reason, I had some issues trying to deploy that from .NET from Visual Studio Code. I'm not really sure if it's something wrong with my machine. Most likely. So another way of doing the deployment is actually to go in here and do something called zip push deploy. So the way that one works is that I can go now on my machine, take a file from here, this is a zip file, take it here and drop it here. Once the file is on that folder, it will automatically be, it will automatically be unzipped, and it will be my new application. But before I do that, I want to give Visual Studio one more chance to see if he want to do the right thing, if he does want to do the right thing or not. So if he doesn't, then I will deploy the application manually using this. However, this is not the way you should deploy applications. I hope that you all agree with that. The way you should do all the deployment should be automated. And you do that by using, CI/CDs, pipelines. You can use services like Azure DevOps. I'm not saying you should use that, but it's actually quite a cool service. Even Amazon uses that as a way for deploying their, when they want you to deploy to their cloud. So I think it's a good service. Let's give it that at least. So it says, yes, now we are done with all the packaging. So now we start to work on the, let's start to work on deploying your application to Azure. So I have here an Azure App Service. It will create a zip package with all the things that I've just created. And then it will upload this file, which is a 22 meg. And normally I've seen from the hotel today, it took me less than 1 minute to upload the zip. So that I wouldn't lose time here. And once it's there, it will unpackage the file. And then it will say, yes, everything went fine. Now just go and browse the page. I can even browse the page by right-clicking in here and say, browse website. So it will take me automatically to the website, so I get to see exactly what's happening. Now, one of the things that I have in my application, it's a database. So I have a SQL Server database here, but the SQL Server database, it's local. And I can't just take local hosted. I cannot just take my machine and move it to Azure. I need to do something else. I need to move the database to Azure. So the second service I want to talk about, it's an Azure SQL database. Now, Azure SQL database comes as a platform, as a service offering, meaning that you get something out of the box from Microsoft and you can use it. It's almost on par when it comes to features with a normal SQL Server. But what Microsoft does on your behalf, they do the backup. So you have the backup for a certain period of time, and depending on how much are you ready to pay, they can even give you point-in-time recovery for the past up to 35 days. So yeah, if someone does a boo-boo, and I think all of us have been there, just removed the wrong table in the database or being connected to the wrong database when we do stuff, you can actually just go back and then restore that database without any issue to that particular point in time. Plus that you have the backups. Alternative is you do it manually, and then if you forget about the backups, then you have an issue. Then you lost the data. So the way the way you go in here to solve this, so let me see, what is this doing? Yes. You go back in here, and in the same resource group, so I would create now a new resource called a SQL Server. And again, this one doesn't take more than a minute to create. So you just specify the details of what you want in there, and in less than 1 minute, you have it created. So let's take the demo 2019-15. I need to create a new database server. I would use the same name for the server. It will ask me for a username and the password that I would use as credentials to log into the database. You cannot use admin because admin it's a reserved name for the system. And once I'm okay with that, actually I need to choose the right location. So I would choose West Europe as well. And the reason I'm choosing West Europe is because I don't want to have the database in in the Central Asia and then my website here, because all the data and everything that I'm reading from the database would actually be read from there. So I'm saying, okay, so I like that name. I can create a database which will be the recipe DB. So this is the name of my database in here. And how do I want to use the database? So Microsoft has now two ways of choosing the type of database. You can either choose how many resources do you want, and then you get your provisioned machine, and they will put a certain amount of number of cores on that. So you pay more or less both for the, you pay both for the hardware and for the licensing and so on when you choose that. So you would end up paying for like the one that for the provision one that they give me with 2 virtual core, I'll have to pay 214 euros per month. Or I can go to the old type, old ways of choosing a database. So I can choose a DTU, and that means I would actually pay only for the, I'll pay per month about 12 euros, and that will give me enough for my application. Now, if I decide that I need more and more and more, then I can just go and change the plan. I can increase that, and then I will have whatever database or whatever size I need for that. I can use a premium offering as well. That will cost a little bit more, but then again, depending on how much are you ready to pay and how popular is your application, when you start making money, I don't think your problem would be, oh, I need to pay for the SQL Server. Because the alternative would be, even if you buy your own SQL Server with the licenses, with everything, it will still cost you the same amount of money. But at least you don't have to have the headache of starting to think about the machines and adding them and doing all the load balancing and all the stuff that you normally have to do. So doing that, I end up paying 12.65 euros per month. And usually that is enough for what my application needs to do. Once I'm done with that, it says, okay, let's move on. Let's see what you want to do next. Do you want to have any access, how do you want to connect to the database? By default, I leave everything to no access, meaning that the database would be completely isolated. And then I go back on it and then do some settings in order to make it useful. I don't need any additional settings. If I have some sample data, if I have some backup that I want to use, I can say, yes, please go here and take the backup from this database. Now, this one being in the central US, it might take some time for me to move the data between the databases, so I would rather create it from my machine instead. And then I'm saying, what do I want to put? So I put some tags on it. I say, again, business unit is demo. And once I got this one, I say review and create, and then go ahead and create the application. Now we can go back and see if the deployment was successful or not. Now it says I need to wait for some long running command to finish. So I'm not really sure what's happening and why it takes that long, because if data is not ready in about in 5 minutes, then Azure will consider that as a failure, so it will stop actually allowing my application. However, once I'm done with the database, and that's what I did here, I can go back. Let me actually open a new window like this, because it would be easier for me to just go there like this and show you things on the on the dashboard. So once I'm done with that, I will have a SQL Server, and then my SQL Server will have actually some firewall settings in here. So the one thing I want to do is just allow Azure services, meaning that if I have a web application, for instance, because it's coming from an internal from an internal server at Microsoft, then it will automatically get access. So I don't have to worry about security. Another thing I can do, I can say, you know what, by the way, Azure sees me coming from this address, and it asks me, do you want me to add this IP address so you can get access to the database from this machine as well? Because otherwise I wouldn't be able to get access. Maybe for administrative purposes, I can say add. Normally in production, you wouldn't do that. You don't want to, you don't want to give that permission. So you only have the services in there and use it there. So the next thing that I can do now, or that I need to do, is to actually take the information about the database and store that information inside my application. So the way I'm doing it here then, it's to go to the web application here and change the connection string. And the connection string would look something like this. So let me show you here. This one would look something like this. I have a database, which is the name of the server that I chose. I use this database name, so the server would be the one on Azure, and the database name would be this one. And I'm having a user and a password that I'm connecting to that. So this is the connection string that I have to take now, for instance. So let me take this one like this. And I will put it inside my configuration for my application. So I can go into configuration, and inside the configuration, I have a connection string here. It's called recipe context. And then I take this one and paste it in here. Maybe remove the last one and press save. So if everything looks okay, after I'm saving, I always forget that. So then I'm going and I'm wondering why it's not working as it should. So once I'm done saving, of course, this application will get restarted. But if I do a refresh now, it will automatically show me, again, the same thing. So it takes a little bit of time now. It needs to establish a connection to the database, and then it reads the data, and then it shows me the thing. Okay? So quite simple. Next step would be, and one of the things that I'm actually looking at is that my application here has a lot of pictures relating to my recipes. And the problem with those pictures is that they are actually, they are taking resources from my web application when they need to be served. So if I want to serve static files, I might not want to give them from a dynamic application. I might want to serve them from a static website that's actually very good at that. And if you look, there are a lot of performance testing done online for different cloud providers, and they always come to the same conclusion. Whenever you use static files, it's much better performance to serve them from a static website than just going, or from a storage account than just going and having them into a regular web application. The same goes for Amazon. The same goes for Google. The same goes for Azure. So there is no difference in that. So the way I will do that is going back here. So now the database is gone. It's created. But the one thing that I can do next is to go here and say I want to create a storage account. Now, once I'm creating the storage account, I need to give it I need to choose a resource group, and I need to give it a name. Now again, the name should be. I don't have that here anymore. I need to take this one. Let's see if this one is available. Again, the name needs to be unique worldwide, as exactly with the website, because they are using a public URL for that. And if it's not unique worldwide, then you will have, they won't be able to. You won't be able to use it. So let's go back here and look Europe, West Europe. So I want to be in the same place, at least, I don't want to have it in a different place. I don't need any premium performance because I'm not going to write too much on it. I'm only going to retrieve the data. And my problem is the network latency. It's not how quick I can get the data from a disk. Now, another reason you want to use a storage account is not only to deliver those kind of files, but you get actually, you get redundancy for your data. Every time you copy something on Azure, Azure gives you 2 more copies. So the price you pay the same, you don't pay extra for, for having 3 copies of your data. But in case that something happens, Microsoft can easily actually regenerate the 3rd copy. So it's easier when you have 3 than when you have 2, and it's safer. And Microsoft gives you 11 nines durability, not availability, but durability. So they guarantee more or less that your data will be there forever, as long as you are not removing it. So that cannot, they cannot guarantee that. But once I'm done that, I say, I just want that. I want it only locally. If I want to make sure that the data might be available in a different location, I can use actually geo-redundant storage, so I can get 3 more copies in a different region. So I will have both West Europe and maybe North Europe. And in that situations, if West Europe, if someone drops a bomb on Amsterdam, I still have my data in Dublin. Of course, if you have the money, why not just go do it? But most situations, you really don't need it, especially not for my recipes. So how do I want to get access to it? Because this one would host my pictures for my application. This should be public, meaning everyone should get access to that data. I don't need. I want to enable secure transfer required, meaning that you only be able to use HTTPS. So I don't want you to use HTTP. Again, being pictures doesn't really matter, but why not being secure by default? So I would leave it enabled. And then, which tags do I want to use? Again, I can use those 2. And then say next, and then create. Now, storage, you pay per gigabyte of data that you stored in there. And it's peanuts. I think it's less than $1 per gigabyte. And my pictures are not even 10 megabytes or something. So it doesn't really matter. So the deployment started. And again, this one should go pretty fast. Very fast, actually. So go to the resource. And now I can see that I have a storage account in here. So what I can do now with my storage account, I can just go in here and say, I want to create a container. Think about the container as a folder, more or less, where I want to place all the stuff that I need for my application. So I create this container. I'll call it images. And the name for the container, or the access to the container, should be at blob level. So yeah, I couldn't delete a resource group, but that's okay. Oh, what happened? Sorry. So when I choose blob, it means that if I know the exact link to that file, I get to read the file. But you need to know the link. If you don't know the link, people can go and start, try to start guessing links, but they won't, if they don't really know it, they won't be able to get access to it. A third option here, so private means no one gets access to it. So you only get access programmatically by having, a signature link. And the last one is a container, which means that you can actually list the content of that particular container and get the name of the file. So depending on what I'm using it for, it might be useful to have that. However, right now I don't care about it. I just want to get access to the blobs. And again, this is already created. I can go inside it, and then I can say I want to upload some images. I can take the images from my local folder, and I can do all those food images. I can say open, and then I can put them into a folder here called food, because I know this is the food pictures that I want to upload. And I say upload, and again, it will take no time to have all the files now in here. In order for me to be able to use that, what I have to do is actually go then and reconfigure my application. So what I'm having in here, and what is it's done already, so it's working now in my application on the online. I need to go in here and specify what is the URL or where all the images are deployed. But again, having a problem with deploying from my machine, I can change that, I can compile, but it's still not getting there, so I won't be able to see the change. However, again, that being said, if I go back to my application in here, I can show you that this one, it's actually, if I say copy the image link, this one, it's like this, So it is the images container, it is in the food folder, and this is the name of the page. When you look for improving performance of your website, one of the very first thing everybody or every application would recommend is to try to move your static assets like pictures and images into a different server. Why? Because when you go and download the page, if you have more pictures, for every single picture that you start to download, you would take one network connection to that particular server. How the browsers are made normally is that they open six like this, yeah. They open six concurrent connections from the browser to the server. So if you want them to be available, or if you want to download, them at once, it's much easier to have them in a dedicated server. So going back to my application, I can see that now I can get to, I get the pages, I get them delivered very quick. Now there's another problem. Those images are very big. So I have images that are almost 4K. And here I just show a small thumbnail. So what I would like to do, I would like to convert those images or make them smaller already on the server. And of course, right now I'm doing them, I'm resizing them on the client, meaning that I have to transfer a very big file to the client, and then I let the client do the resizing, which might not be a problem, but the more images you have, the more network bandwidth you are wasting with unnecessary data sent back and forth. So what I need to do now, I need to take this information and I need to do, to automatically create those thumbnails, or at least to resize the images. And the way you do that is by using another service called Azure Functions. Now, Azure Functions is actually what Microsoft would say, this is our, way to implement serverless. And by the way, I completely forgot to show you. For every single service, there is a very good documentation page. So whenever you want to, read a bit more about it, Microsoft has a whole, sub-site dedicated to every single service that they are providing. The nice part is this one. You can download everything as a PDF, and then you can just start reading it. So especially when I'm flying, that's a perfect way for me to go through the documentation and understand exactly what is doing. So we have the databases here. Microsoft offers a lot of databases, so it's not only Azure SQL database. If you have a PostgreSDB, you have MongoDB, you have whatever you have, Microsoft definitely would have a a managed version of that, meaning that they are taking care of the backup, they are taking care of of how however machines you need and so on. So now coming to so storage and then coming to functions, actually next functions, coming to functions, your functions are actually just a way to, what it's called serverless. Now, serverless, it's a very ugly name. It's a misnomer, I would say, because it's not really that you don't have a server. It means I would get it, like server careless, like you don't care or you couldn't care less about the server where that gets created. So what happens is that you have a trigger. Like in my case, my trigger would be the fact that I'm uploading an image on my storage account. Or the trigger could be actually a certain point in time for the days. Like it is 3 a.m. and then I want to run something. So when that trigger happens, what you will get this function invoked on your behalf. Now, when this function gets invoked, you pay for the time that you use the processor. And then these times adds up, and then at the end of the month, you will get the bill for the number of hours you run your function. However, it takes many hours in order for you to start paying, because Microsoft always gives, I think it's about $1,000 for free of running these kind of things. So the more you run a function, the more you would have to think about how you want to host it. However, this means that you don't care about where the server is created. You don't care about paying for a resource that you are not going to use it, because you only use that server, that that virtual machine, when the code is running. So if you allow Microsoft or or Azure actually to take that, they will do this. They will say, okay, we have enough resources, so whenever you need to run a function, we can create a new instance and a new instance and a new instance. You can run as many instances at the same time. So what they do, they just aggregate the number of minutes you are running, and they will put them together. So when I want to create an Azure function, the way to do it is to go in here and say, create a resource, of course, and the resource will be a function app. Now, when I'm creating a function application, I have several options here. So one of them would be so one of the limitations they have at the moment is that you cannot have a function in the same resource group where you have a web application. Or if you want to put it in the same resource group, so it means in the same folder, then I need to change a little bit the way it works. So to make it okay, I will create, no, again, that's the wrong thing. I would do a demo 2019-11-15 func. So this is my function, okay? The function name would be exactly the same. Do I want to use code or Docker container? Again, it doesn't really matter. I can use code. What runtime? Again, that wouldn't matter, because what I'm going to create, it's a simple the .NET application, so I can use .NET Core without any issues. I'll put it in West Europe, and then I can choose how do I want to host that. Do I want to host it on Linux or on Windows? And do I want to pay on a consumption-based model, or if I want to use an app service plan? If I choose app service plan, it means that I can use an existing web application and just run that inside that particular web application, meaning that I'm not even paying for running the function. So the function will run inside that machine. But the problem with that might be that I'm actually taking resources from my web application in order to run that. So if I don't want to do that and I want to have a real serverless type of approach, I would use consumption. Premium, it's something in between, and what they are doing, actually, they are allowing us to get, to have a machine pre-created for me, so my application starts quicker. One of the things, because your infrastructure gets created when something triggers it, what you need to do actually is to say, is that it takes time. It can take a minute for Azure, for instance, to be able to create that infrastructure, compile and deploy your code and make it run. So it might take some time. So you need to take that into consideration. Do I want application insights? No, I don't. Again, going back to tagging, I will put it in the same business unit and in the same group, and then review, create, and that would be created. It says I forgot something in the basics, and that was what? The resource group. Why did you change that? Oh, create new. I need to create new. Okay. Okay. Review and create. Works okay. And then I'm just creating this. Okay. So once this is done, then I can go and edit my function. So let me show you a ready-made function here. I have a I have an Azure function, which is this one. So the Azure function has a very simple code. I'm actually using a library. I can show you that. It's a resize images. Come on. Go, go, go. And you can actually edit functions inside the portal directly. So when you deploy them, they will get compiled, so you can just use them from the portal directly. Come on. Now it's slow. So what I'm doing actually with the function, as soon as you put something in a storage account, I will take that file and I will do a resize with the file. So I take the image that you send me as an in blob. I will do a resize of the image, using the size of that box. So it's 130 per 200. And then I'm saving the image on the out blob. Who is in blob and out blob? That's the nice part. I actually get those as configurations. So I'm having here information saying the in blob, it's actually a blob trigger. And what that means, it means that it will be exactly the file I'm just loading up. And I'm looking inside the images folder, and I'm taking the name of that file, so I can use exactly the same name. So what happens is that as soon as I'm uploading a file in my storage account, that file would be automatically converted and it would be saved into a different storage account, which would be actually inside the small images folder. So I can show you here now, if we go back to this, I can show you that I have in my storage account, which I'm using for this one, I have inside my containers, I have two I have two different containers. One is called images and the other one is called small images. So as soon as I put an image in there, the small images got updated. So I have files that are between 23 and 3 kilobytes big. So everything got now compressed. And again, it's done automatically. I can show you if you want. I can go in here, small images. I can take that and I can delete all the files. No, not like this, but I can do this. Can take those 4 files. Let's do only those 4. So which one? Serial egg. So serial and egg file. And I can go back to the containers. I can choose images. And then food. And then if I upload the file in here, select serial, egg, fish sticks, hamburger. I say okay. I want to override the files because they already exist. So I say I'm okay, just override them. By overriding the files, it means that I'm automatically rewriting, I'm automatically generating those. So if I'm going back in here, containers and small images, you'll see that in less than a minute, I got all those 4 new files here, which is quite good. The last service I want to show you, it's called the Key Vault. Now, what Key Vault does helps me store secrets. And the way it works, you create this Key Vault resource, and then you start giving permissions to either users or to web applications. So again, I have created one already here, and I can show you the one already created. It's called whatever name, so I just clicked here on the name to give me a name. And I have one single secret, and the secret is actually a connection string. Now, if I'm looking at this one, I can show you the content of it by looking, because I have the rights as as an administrator, I have the rights, but I can remove that user as well, so no one gets to see it. The reason I want to put it in a different place is because I don't want my admins to see the password for my database. They should only admin the web, make the administration of the web application. So, or even the developers, if they need to deploy something inside Azure, they would use that and they will have the things there. So going back here to my Key Vault, actually the way you give permissions is by creating access policies. So me as a user, I have a lot of permissions, so that's how I was able to see it. But my recipe application has only get permission, meaning that this application will get to read the connection string. So when I want to see that, I can go now to the application and look at the configuration for this application. Here, look at the configuration and get a connection string. And the connection string that I'm using, instead of using directly the name of the connection string, I'm just saying, oh, by the way, you need to read that from the Key Vault and the URI, or where you would find the secret, would be there. So by using that, it means that automatically whenever my application runs, it will access the key vault. Key vault sees, oh, so this is web application, has the right. So not the user, not the person coming to the application for the web, but the web application itself has the permissions to read the file, to read the secret. So then I will give it the connection string, and which makes it very easy, to manage that and have it in different places. Now the key vault allows you even to have your own hardware security module, meaning that if you want to encrypt data with your own keys without without having Microsoft access to it, you can do that. It costs a little bit of money, but then you know for sure that US government, even if they come with a subpoena, they won't be able to see any of the data because you own the security key and they cannot get to it. Okay? So those were the 5 services that I think are very important for us as developers to be aware of. Those 5 services, there are links to them on the documentation site, and they are very well documented. Start looking at them, start using them, because I really think this is how we should start doing development. If you use other clouds, look at Amazon. They have exactly similar services, so it's not it's not only Azure. I just presented the Azure ones because this is the one that I feel home with. Okay. With that being said, thank you.